Hello, welcome to Prime Lenses. I'm Ian. Each week I speak with a guest about 3 lenses that have meant something to them on their photographic journey. My guest this week is Phil Penman. He's shot the city streets for over 25 years, shooting everything from Porsches to a pandemic, using a range of gear from just about every manufacturer you can think of. Most recently, he's travelled the world teaching workshops, chasing weather, and has even, as you'll hear in our conversation, had the good sense to spend some time in Scotland. It's classic Prime Lenses. We even cover a little bit about whether or not you should shoot colour or black and white, and whether or not 35 is really the one true focal length. Spoilers, it definitely is. So please do enjoy this conversation with Phil Penman.
Used to travel Scotland quite a lot when I was young. My parents had an obsession with it, so we used to go up there quite a lot.
Oh, wow.
And then the guy that he worked for, he was a guy called Lord Neil, who apparently was one of the most famous barrister lords in the country, which we didn't know at the time. But he had a huge stately manor in Scotland, and we were allowed to use his garage.
Wow.
To sleep in his garage.
That's amazing.
No way they were letting us live in the house, but we walked in there and it had like the big stairwell with the big painting of the original selfie on the wall.
Yes, the original selfie. I really like that. There was an exhibition last year which was the history of the selfie. And kind of going back all the way through, because self-portraits and self-portraiture and stuff is a kind of old, tried and true kind of practice exercise given to photographers. And also they were just talking about how we think of it as a very modern new concept, but actually dates back hundreds of years. And as long as there's been photography, there's been photographers testing out their equipment with a photo of themselves to make sure it's working properly.
Apparently we got way worse though. Now we need to shoot at least 20 million images of ourselves in every possible scenario, just in case.
Yeah, there was no Victorian person with their camera on the tripod, like holding it up at the right angle and making sure, looking up to make sure that their chin looks great and their cheekbones are lit. And
Fox Talbot, can you raise that camera just a little bit more?
No, it is funny. It is funny how it's kind of in the hands of everyone now, but the phone has become this kind of documentary device. Much more, our memory. It's stacking memories up like index cards almost. Like there's that menu of that restaurant I don't want to forget. There's that thing I saw, but then also there's that picture of my kids doing something. It's an odd kind of juxtaposition of everything together.
Oh, it's nuts. I had a friend of mine. He's head of the Met Gala ball. He kind of puts that together, and they were saying when they did that, I think it was 8 million pictures within 24 hours they saw online, just from one party.
Did you see Jeff Goldblum at the Oscars was sitting in the audience? He was photographed over his shoulder looking at his own red carpet photos on his phone just to see how it come out.
Class.
I mean, he's a very dapper man. So I can understand he would want to see how it's all come out.
I think he's big into photography. I know he's like...
Is he?
Yeah, he's like probably he was like analyzing the lens choices that they were using maybe. I know he goes to like a lot of the Leica events in Los Angeles.
Ah, right. I didn't know that. Yeah. I mean, I love hearing about people who like they're in them from this one sphere, but then it turns out they have another interest. My other favorite one of those is Jeff Bridges, who loves his wide lux camera and takes tons of film photos and had a history when he was on film sets of making a book at the end of the production to share with everyone. And that's fantastic.
Yeah. Brad Pitt's another one. I know he uses a lot of R lenses, and he was a big because I used to carry my Leica around with me regularly, and so I would chat with some of these people about it as well, because they pick up on the fact that you've got a Leica, so they would bring that up. Great conversation start with a lot of these people. It was an instant respect.
Yes, I think that's the thing is it's like you don't accidentally... It's like when Daniel Craig was at the Olympics last year with his M, and what was lovely to see was that it appears like he uses it. because it was nicely worn and nicely brassed on the edges and stuff. And I remember I got a message off my stepdad was like, he's only got like a 28 or a 24mm lens on at the Olympics. And I just replied, going, well, I think if you're Daniel Craig, you probably get to sit close enough that's okay. I think he's probably going to be all right. You and I in the nosebleeds might need something a bit longer.
Yep, definitely. I had a teacher guy once, and I walked into this house, and it was like this enormous palace, like literally like a city block. And I was like, who the hell is this guy? And he was like, he just wants to get into Leica. He just wanted it was basically, I was just teaching him how to use the camera. And it turned out it's the guy who owns the Bond franchise. And I'm like, that makes sense. That big ass house, that makes sense.
Well, after the news last week, it's probably going to get a little bit bigger now. They've sort of signed the rights away. The Broccolis, I think Amazon have got it now.
Oh, yeah. There was all the discussion about who was going to be the next Bond, right?
Yeah, well, we're going to get everything now. There'll be a Bond cinematic universe and spin-off seasons and series, and they can go crazy nuts now and build.
I think they already know who it is. Like, they've known a long time.
Oh, really?
I think they've known for quite some time. I had a person that is an informed person said to me like a couple of years ago. They said, "Oh yeah, it's going to be such and such."
Wow.
I'm like,
right,
okay, interesting.
The Highlands today is very grey, which seems kind of appropriate because I think your style of black and white photography, where it's kind of very evenly lit almost, and like that's the sky is a giant softbox, would probably be great for today. How's New York this morning treating you?
It's the same. It's very dark and grey. Yeah, we got a little bit of sun yesterday, but that was it. It's freakishly warm right now for us.
Yeah, it's not too bad here. We've got nearly 10 degrees.
Yeah, this is not for me. I've been thing is I was in the UK like for the last couple of weeks, and normally I want to be here for the big snowstorms, and I've pretty much missed them all at this point.
Well, you are an out in the elements photographer, aren't you? Like you're the weather. It's really wonderful looking at your images and sort of going through and thinking about the atmosphere that you managed to capture and the way that that's obviously something you've sought out. You're not accidentally in those conditions. And I was going to ask, because you've been shooting for so long and the motivation to pick up the camera, but you come from a very outdoorsy place. You were talking about Scotland there and the Highlands and things. Have you just always been attracted to the outdoors and were always in the elements, and so that naturally then became part of your photography and the thing your eyes drawn to, do you think? Or, was there some other motivation?
No, I hated the rain. You came from England. That's all it does. No, when I was growing up, it was, we didn't really get any snowstorms, right? It's just not a thing you rarely ever see. I think the big one I remember was the 70s. Like that was just as I was born, I remember it was a big one then. But it became a thing of like adding atmosphere to an image. So I didn't really get into it until I went out in my first snowstorm, and then I realized like the pictures that you can get with this. And then you get addicted to it because you're like, oh, this is so much better than the regular stuff that I get.
Yeah.
So you look forward to those days now. And if it's like raining, before where you would be in England, you'd be like, oh, God damn it, not again. Because it's miserable. You always wonder why they just have such gloomy faces. Hardly ever smiling. Like, yeah, if it rained every single day, so would you.
So do you think that's part of it? You're an outsider, and that kind of means that the place even retains its beauty, doesn't it, when it's unfamiliar? Because even if the weather's bad, you're like, well, I'm somewhere different.
Oh, we've had to seek it out before. Like it was a shoot that I had to do, and it was the middle of August, and they said, oh, it needs to be a Christmas shoot. And we're like, where the hell are we going to find that now? And we literally went on a map, a worldwide map, and just figured out, right, well, let's go. We can't all just fly to Argentina or whatever, but let's go to Trondheim, Norway. So we flew in deliberately in the middle of August to Trondheim because we knew that the weather there was going to be a lot more foul, and it worked for the shoot that we had to do. But yeah, no, I seek it out.
Yeah, no, I love that. Do you think that's a kind of sign that's a bygone thing? Because when I speak to a lot of photographers who historically would do like big shoots and things like that and big travel stuff, is that kind of being checked. So some of the time, I get the impression that like that would be more of a rarity now. Like unless you're photographing ocelots in the wild or something, where you have to go to a thing, then creative ideas like that are maybe being curbed a little bit, or it's getting harder to justify doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, it was different because they were shooting me
Right.
shooting.
Okay.
So you were the focal point of the shoot to promote a particular thing. But I've done all the big commercial stuff, and it's weird because there's still big money at the top, but everything in the middle just got destroyed. And then you've got everybody else fighting for scraps at the bottom. But there is still, like, in certain sectors, there's huge amounts of money, like, cars, pharmaceutical, they still have a ton of money to spend. And it's interesting at the moment because with the drive for AI, everyone's pushing AI. There's going to become this sector where people want real, and that will become an expensive thing because you will be like a specialist in that. Whereas, because you can still see it in the images. It's not there. It's because the whole point is that it's the emotions of a person coming out, and if it's coming from a computer, you don't get that.
Yeah, completely agree.
So I yeah, I know a lot of marketing people where they're pushing clients and their brands now to go more real. When you never chase the crowd anyway. Like, that's marketing like 101. You don't go where everybody already is. You go and figure, right, well, it's how do we go outside the box? And if everyone's going AI, that means you go completely the opposite way and you push real.
It's got to be a kind of shortcut to connecting with people as well. Like the idea of, because people make things and you want to, I think it was something Conan O'Brien said at the Oscars introduction thing that he did, we've got to celebrate the people you never see, and that this is a craft, a person-led endeavor, right? Like this, it's a coming together of a group. Every great creative project that you admire has had a group, a few people at least involved in bringing that thing to life. There's nothing that you've ever admired that you could push a button and it just spat it out. And even generative AI required, an understanding of programming and coding wizardry and making some. That in itself is an achievement. Whether or not you think the output that it then generates is worthwhile. Like 2 years ago, it could barely draw you a picture of a wonky dog. Now it can draw you a picture of a car that you'll at least look twice at and go, is that real? Like, you'll look for the clues that show you it's fake. It's getting harder and harder to tell, but there is still a soullessness and kind of emptiness to it. My wife was sending me something she saw on Instagram the other day, which was purporting to be bunk beds for kids done in the style of castles, and they were photorealistic in the sense that you looked at them and thought that's a very impressive bedroom with a very impressively built castle, but it's only when you look at the detail of things in the background or the sides of books and they've just got sort of gibberish shapes on them. Well, that's not real. But that's the world we live in now, is you have to kind of work out what is and isn't.
It's very, very scary because, especially from a photojournalistic point of view, his story, you are not going to know what's real anymore. We already see it where they've gone in, they've deleted news articles for things that happened. Like, I know of stories that happened in New York after 9/11 that have been completely deleted from the books. We watched, stuff that we watched on TV, stuff that I remember happening because I covered it, have been completely deleted because there's nothing physical anymore. So yeah, it happened, I think, with the Doomsday's books, where they were all on. I think the story goes that they were all on zip drives, and they had no way to read the zip drive, so they had to physically make people write it all again. Because you're reliant on technology, and as we know, technology fails quite a lot. If you've ever lost a hard drive, you know what I'm talking about. So you don't want to get to that space where we become completely reliant on this thing. And what was it they say in that movie, digital dust? I love that expression. Like, it's
Yeah. No, it's one of the reasons actually recently, and I've been talking to a lot of guests on the show about it, about printing things and about putting things in books and things, because everyone knows how a book works. And we're going through this with my grandmother, who's 93, and we're starting to help her. She's probably going to have to go into care, and so we're helping her sort through her belongings and things. And thankfully, a lot of her memories are printed. They're physical prints, they're photographs. I found a ring binder of a trip from 1992 that she and my granddad went on that I had no idea about. And then the other thing I found, which is proving harder to deal with, is the stack of memory cards. So if you remember early digital smart media cards, if you remember smart media, right?
Yeah.
Like I've had to order a secondhand card reader just so I can read these things. And we're only 15 years removed, but I'll have to put that thing through an adapter to be able to connect it to a modern machine so I can actually read it, because it's USB. So that has to go USB to USB-C. And so that's only with like 15 years.
Yeah.
So goodness only knows where we'll be 20 from now,
I had like 15 years worth of archives, of hard drives, and I want to consolidate them all. And you've got like Firewire 800, 400, Thunderbolt, all of this crap, and you're just like, we bought into this. And then you've got like, adapter into adapter, trying to get them onto another hard drive. It was so much simpler when it was just film. And now you're paying like $200 a month for cloud storage. If you're a working professional fashion photographer, God, imagine like how much money you have to pay a month just for your cloud storage. That's a car payment for some of these people, just so that your work's backed up. It's scary.
Yeah, and with the opposite tension as well, of budgets, like we were alluding to before, about the tension creatively on budgets. It's like, well, it's going to be harder and harder to justify. Like it is putting the squeeze on people doing really good creative work, and I do worry that like those lower level jobs will just disappear. The jobs where you learn your craft, which presumably you did those sorts of like small commercial run and gun jobs when you're starting out, like those might be the ones that get replaced and just disappear. And then where do people learn?
You still have to know how to talk to people, because that job is not just taking pictures, it's being presentable, showing up on time. A lot of people can't even do that today. They can't even show up on time, and then they wonder why they don't get a call back. So those simple things, they would say, like, just get the basics right. A lot of people can't even do that. So like, you could be the best photographer in the world, but if you can't show up on time, you're not going to get another job anyway.
No, I think the same with a lot of things. It's that I am the custodian now, a year in, of a moderately successful podcast, but part of that is showing up. It's an episode a week, it's a newsletter a week. It's just that consistency, and then you build over time. People know it's there, and then you look at you can look at a back catalogue of guests, and when I'm approaching new people, I can go, look, there's people like Gadget, and people, like you've got there's Stefan, and so you have a few people they can put their finger on. Oh, okay, there's a couple I recognise, but it only comes through consistency.
It pays off.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It's a full-time job, but you look at like Instagram, right? If you're posting sporadically, you're never going to get anywhere. Like you're basically you're trying to trick a computer.
Yes,
a computer algorithm. It's got nothing to do with your content at all. It's to do with, I've been posting pretty much every single day for the last 6 years.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of work. And you can schedule them and queue them up and stuff, but you still got to take time to respond to people, all the messages that you get. But you see the results where, you went from 2K to, what's 275 now. But it's a lot of work. But you reap the rewards of that work that you put in.
Yeah, I was reading your article about that, the stuff you wrote about Instagram last year. What prompted you to kind of put that out there and share that?
Because I have to teach a lot of people, and they're always like, just you just get dejected with the constant, why is my work not getting seen? And I have to explain to them, look, it's got nothing to do with you. Okay, it's got very little to do with the work. Like, I'll give you an example. Like recently, it's probably within a month of doing that article, my numbers just got absolutely crushed, and you start seeing like minus numbers, minus followers per day, and it's this cycle. You can tell the algorithm's kicked in and it's saying, oh well, okay, he's on a downward spiral. You could put up the best work in the world, it doesn't matter, you're not going to boot that spiral that they put you in. And then all of a sudden you read something about like polished videos don't do well on Instagram. If your video looks too good, or if there is a logo in it, seriously, if they think that there is a logo in it, like the AI can see this, it thinks that you're trying to promote a brand and it will kill your post. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try doing a couple of reels without my logo in it. And then all of a sudden you see, all right, 500K views again, like back to where it was. And now all of a sudden the trajectory, like you start seeing, right, 200-300 followers a day again. And it's like, it's such BS. It's so annoying that you're trying to trick this computer. And you want to just spend your time creating the work, but at the same time you need to get your work out there, you need to get seen, because if you're doing a book, how are you going to sell the book? You need the audience, and you're just juggling all the time going, come on, like, and every time you think you got it right, they'll make some stupid tweak that kills their own product, not just you. And then they'll have to make a change to try to fix it again.
Yeah, well, I think the logo tracking stuff, I read some reporting about this on The Verge, I think it was, where they were saying that was an effort to block people who were just cross-posting. They were making stuff on TikTok and then putting it on Instagram. And when you post stuff, when you export your video, it puts the TikTok logo in. And so they didn't want to promote videos that had the logo of a competitor platform in. But this
makes sense.
Yeah, which it does. But then the unintended consequence is someone who is actually operating professionally and wants people to recognize their content quickly, you should be completely able to put your logo. It shouldn't be, you shouldn't be penalized for that, but you have to kind of navigate these things. It's all the problem of your business model being dependent upon someone else's platform. I think that's the issue. That's why I'm very consciously building this as an audio first, podcast first, email and website thing, because then it's independent, and that will mean it will grow more slowly.
Key anyway.
Yeah.
That's the most powerful thing you have is your newsletter and your website. And we've seen politically podcasts have become, that is now the platform. People don't trust media anymore, rightly so. I worked in it for 20 years, trust me, I know. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the doors that you're completely unaware of, but podcasts have become the thing. And then your social media is basically your way of driving people to your mailing list, your website, your podcast.
Away from the modern world, it's probably worth touching on. People will know you as a Leica photographer, and like every photo of you that I see, you've got an M in your hand mostly, and you're out on the streets, bundled up, cool New York hat, like that. That's my Phil Penman photo in my head. But where was the M kind of always the camera, or when you were starting out, how did you get a camera in your hands first, I guess, and then when was it that you found, because your lens choices are some gorgeous, like the classic Leica, some classic Leica glass. I love the 35 being in there because that's the one true focal length. I love 35 as well. But how did you start, and did you find Leica, or did it find you?
Are we like first camera ever? Like camera I ever shot?
Maybe the first one that spoke to you and you were like, I want to do this.
Well, because I shot with everything. So I started with, my first camera was a Nikon, then I went through the Nikon range, got screwed after 9/11, like really badly by Nikon. And it was, to put it in perspective, basically, because we were shooting on 9/11, our cameras got wasted, right, with all the stuff. Canon at the time were doing free repairs for anyone shooting on 9/11, whereas Nikon charged me like $1,200 because my camera was 2 days out of warranty. So I was just like, well, okay, if that's the way that your company wants to operate, then I don't want to be part of your company. So I switched, went to Canon, shot with Canon for a bit, but that was work. That was the day-to-day celebrity stuff. And the total joy of photography was just ripped from right under me. Uh, so my first, I knew that I needed to get back to what I loved, and I had a friend of mine who was a celebrity photographer as well, and he said, "Look, I've got an M7 film camera with a 28. I'll sell it to you for like $2,500 because I need to get some money." And I was like, "Yep, done, sold. I'll take that." And then that spiral just kicks in, and it's like, oh, but there's an R8. Oh, that looks nice. There's an R9. Oh, I have one of them too, and a 6.2. And then you've got all the R lenses. Then I went and bought the digital module. I was one of the people that actually had that amazing idea. Where, for those that don't know, is basically you could shoot film and digital on the same camera just by changing the back out. And then it was because I was shooting primarily chrome, so everything was transparency. Then I got myself M9. That was the first kind of like digital one. I held out from the M8 because it wasn't the full frame. I got the M9 and just like it just took off from there. You know, that was that was the start of it all. And then because of the module, I feel it's so stupid now, but I sold all my R glass because because they killed the module. And you were just like, right now I'm stuck with all this gear. I was hoping to go down that route, and they killed it. So I sold all my R glass, and then of course what happens? They bring out an M with an R adapter, and at this point I'd sold all my R glass, and I was invested in the M system, and then it's funny, I've ended up having to buy back most of that R glass now.
That happens. I picked up an R lens before Christmas, but it's an extremely silly one. It's one of the Novaflex 400 and 560. It's a two-part set, and you hold it like a gun to focus this 560mm lens. So I've adapted that to my M because my only camera is my M11. So
Okay.
I'm all in on M, but I've adapted. So this thing, I'll send you a picture afterwards. It's hilarious. Like it's giant, but it takes really
Yeah.
really fun photos adapting this thing to the M. The only problem is that there's a button on the front that it would have connected into the R with the auto film advance system on the bottom. So you pull this thing in. It's all designed to reduce shake. It's really clever. Like it's a mad solution to the problem, but it has two grips on it, and you can pull the trigger on the front, and that would have triggered the auto, like the shutter and the auto advance. So instead, now I have to hold it in a slightly awkward way and use the shutter release on the M because I can't.
Police must love you.
Yes.
When you got taking pictures, they must be all. Really, sir? Really?
Yeah.
That's a camera?
I did take some photos of it and shared it with some folks I know in the US who I've had on the podcast, and they were strongly encouraging me never to take that lens to America. They were like, please don't bring this, you'll get shot.
Yeah.
But I do want to take it to a MotoGP race at some point because I think that the coatings. Cool. Well, yeah, the coatings are going, and it's a little bit, the quality of the image is very 90s, so 80s, 90s kind of telephoto. That way that when we grew up reading in magazines, the kinds of photos we would see of like motocross and or F1 and stuff like that, it has that kind of look. Like it's the coatings on the lens. It's basically attaching a camera to a telescope, is what it is, and then focusing. So yeah, very silly but very fun. And I do like the look of that R100 macro, but that fetches a fair amount.
Nice.
Yeah, that would be
they've all gone up. They've all, I go to Japan every year and go to like Kitamura, where they have just cabinets of old lenses, and everything just went up. Like that beautiful 35-1.4 R lens, that was like 400,000 yen last time I was there. So that's quite a. It's not that much cheaper than a regular one, like a regular M lens.
To segue nicely onto your 35 lux, like the benefit of the 35 lux, like all the M series stuff, is it's very small. It's very easy to carry around. I mean, it's not the smallest 35, but it's not big.
No, you got to put in perspective, like all the gear that we're using now. You go back to shooting, not just film, but like working professionals. All of this gear weighs nothing. Like your whole Leica setup could weigh less than one lens that a professional photographer is having to use. It's, you see it with, because you're working, you've got 3 cameras around you, because you don't have time to take lenses off when you're doing jobs. You're just jumping from camera to camera shooting, and you're trying to navigate so many things going on at the same time. So, it's always funny when people complain about the weight of something. I'm like, oh, you have no idea. You have absolutely no idea. This is like a luxury. I can put most of my lenses that I want to use on a job into like a small, tiny bag.
And it's quite unassuming as well. I think that's one of the nice things about the system as well, is that it's people don't often think of it as a camera. Like if you turned up with like a big traditional zooms, like Canon and Sony sports lenses that are kind of the grey or white finish or whatever, and so that yells professional photographer and professional. Whereas the M's a bit more approachable for whatever reason. I don't know why. Do you find it just disarms people a little bit when you approach them with it, because you're presumably getting fairly close to some of your subjects quite often?
Yeah, it's that's probably one of the main advantages, really. It's no one really pays too much attention to it unless it's somebody in the know. I've had that on jobs before where I've shown up, and there was a celebrity I had to do over here called Paula Dean, who was like a famous chef who'd got in a lot of trouble for some stuff. And you show up with this it was, a lifestyle portrait shoot, and they've got a team of like 8 people, and they're expecting this huge photography crew to show up, right? And you show up on your own, lugging your lights, and then you pull your camera out, and it's this tiny thing without any logo on it, and they're just like, "What the hell?" And then the makeup artist actually turns around to me and is like, "Is that a Leica?" And I went like, "Yeah." And he said, "This guy's not messing around. If he's using that gear, he is not messing around." And then all of a sudden, their faces changed. They wouldn't let me leave the house until they saw the work. But then they were like, "Yeah, you're right. He's really good at what he does." And I'm like, "Well, thank you very much."
Yes, I'm
But
glad
it,
I passed.
it, yeah, I'm glad I passed the test, and you allowed me to get out of the house.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what would happen if they didn't like the work. Maybe I'd still be down there. But
Yeah, could be. I was at an event just
yeah,
before Christmas, and there were photographers at the event, and they had all Sony gear. And I wandered over to one of them and asked about their camera and just what they were, if they were having a good night and stuff. And the guy went, "Yeah, let's talk about yours." And I went, "Oh, you noticed my camera?" And he went, "Everyone's noticed your camera." Like it was just a matter of fact thing. It was like the people in the room with cameras were like, "That guy's up to something." It's like, no, I'm a
yeah,
tourist, but you know,
yeah. No, it definitely allows you to be able to be a little bit slicker on the street. You don't stand out as much. You'll notice I wear like long jackets all the time as well, because I can have my camera underneath my jacket,
yeah.
come out and get my shot. So people, you're not really drawing attention to yourself so much. Like there's certain cities that you can go in the world where you can't be walking around with a camera dangling around your neck.
Yeah.
Like someone's going to start following you. So it's nice that you can do that, but also the fact that you can have like, two free bodies on you sometimes, and it really doesn't take up that much space. It
Mm.
doesn't feel like, you're doing a workout.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they've definitely done us a solid, especially with the 11. Like the weight saving on the 11, I did notice coming from the 10 was that 20% weight saving on the aluminium. I was like, that's actually, I was skeptical because I didn't think it was that heavy anyway, really.
Yeah.
But I felt like actually this is good. I'm glad I've got this. I'm glad that and also there's a few modern like things. I do worry about like, do you see Sigma's new camera that they've just announced, the BF? That's just
I saw the design of it.
yeah.
I haven't really looked into the.
It looks very. I mean, the short version is, what if something the size of a Ricoh GR3 was full frame and had interchangeable lenses, right? Like it's very very tiny, and it's USB-C everything, and it's internal storage, and. But I just worry about building stuff that is, the modularity of camera systems, like you were saying with the R system. Like there's an alternate future where multiple digital backs were made for that camera, or actually those bodies exist still in the world. someone could make another digital back if they wanted to. Like it's not beyond the wit of man to do something like that. And then you've got native use of all those lenses and things. I worry about us continuously building things that are just, cases for e-waste for a period of time, and then eventually there'll be an M12 or an M13 or whatever, and there's no, things that are fixed lens. Qs are a good example of this. Like the Leica Q is an incredible camera, and that lens is tremendous. And if I ever cave and let myself buy another camera, it will be a Q for that lens, right? Fundamentally, because it's just beautiful. It's wonderful to use.
The lens costs more than the camera.
Well, exactly. If you were to buy an equivalent,
people don't realize that lenses actually cost more than the camera if you were to buy it. But obviously, if you sell enough volume of cameras, then effectively you pay for the lens.
Yeah, I asked Stefan whether there was any chance of that one ever coming to another camera, and he went, "It's 0.8 millimeters away from the sensor, so no, there's no chance of putting that lens in something else. Like, it will live and die in that camera forever." The Ghost version of that camera is the silver and white is tremendous.
But you don't see that often.
No, that's one you couldn't easily carry around, and it's not very stealth. It kind of flies in the face of what we were talking about as well. Of like, practically speaking, you actually want something that.
Well, I like the bling all white one that they made.
Yeah.
Did you ever see? What was it? I think it was
Snow
for the M10.
Yeah.
Yeah. It looked awesome, but you're like, yeah, I wouldn't be able to wear that in public.
Well, you couldn't take it out anywhere. Yeah.
And you'd be worried that you just scuff, that slight. It's like my cameras are beaten to pieces.
Of course.
It's like I use them.
Yeah.
And you'd be just so precious with it that something was going to happen.
Yeah. No, for real.
That's it's a collector's piece.
Yes, like that Audi co-designed 60th anniversary one that they did as well. I think that's a really wonderful looking camera. But again, I'd be frightened to take it out the box. I would look at it occasionally, and then I think that's a shame with a lot of these special editions is that they're really, really cool. Like the platinum one that they've just done. What an incredible thing to make. But at the same time, I can't see that you'll see them in the wild very often.
Well, I don't think it's intended. I think it's like watches. I know people that have bought lenses and then been offered double the amount the very next day, but you can't sell it because there's a buyback clause when you buy a lot of these lenses. So I think you have to give first right of refusal to Leica for like 2 years, and then you can sell it. So there's to save people like cramming the market with all this stuff.
Your 35 and 75s are presumably are they your daily driver, kind of mostly in the bag, mostly on the bodies when you're out on the street and kind of doing stuff?
Yeah, so but my two favorites are the 35 Summilux, the 1.4, and then my dream was the 75 Noctilux, the 1.25 lens, and that took me all of 2 years to build up the courage to do it.
Yeah.
So I was borrowing from good friend and Leica rep who's since passed, John Kreidler, who John was awesome. He would help me out with everything, and he kept loaning me the 75 to use on shoots and stuff, and he was like, "This is so good," but it's well, $15,000 lens, so it's not. It's a very high barrier to entry lens, but at the same time, it's going to give you a look. Well, it gives you a look that you can't really get with most other lenses.
Is it a bit too perfect? I've had another guest on the show who said the 75 was an incredible achievement in terms of everything that it does, but that they felt that it is unique in its look, but they felt it was almost too good, and it was a little bit like that 90 SL lens that they make, which is just incredible optical clarity and, image quality, no distortion. And I wonder whether they've made an incredible thing there, but it connects with you, because quite often when I speak to people who have lenses of that quality, they say, I use this and it's incredible and I use this for my shoots, but it's not connecting with them quite the same way. But this one really spoke to you. So I'm sort of curious as to, when it's that close to optical perfection, why does it work for you, do you think?
I always want like a crisp sharpness to something in image. So if I'm doing a portrait, I want the eye to be pin, but then I want that fall off. I don't want the edges. I just completely want to put that out. So I knew that, all right, if I use a good selection of ND filters, I can carry on shooting all my street work at 1.25. Like even like my wider scenes, not just portraits. It's a lot harder to do because your room for error is nothing. If you're going up close and you're doing a portrait, a headshot of someone, it's millimeters that you could be out. I can't use it on the M without the EVF, the Visiflex is like an electronic viewfinder. There's no way I'd be able to focus with that thing because it's so close. You could use the rear screen if you wanted to, but I prefer to use the electronic viewfinder for that particular lens. A lot of people that use that lens actually shoot it on the SL system because you can punch in the zoom focus, you can lock in. But the thing is, even if you lock in and you move just a little bit, it's gone again. So, but I knew that it was going to give a lot of my work a look that it would be unique to what I was doing at the time. And then, of course, what happens is you put up some pictures online, and people go, "Oh, what lens was that?" And then next thing you get messages from, you tell them, and then it's like I think within 1 week, just from the messages that I saw, I had 4 messages of people said they bought the lens based on seeing my images, and I'm like, God damn, there's so much money out there apparently.
Apparently, where's my affiliate link?
Yeah.
I've done a similar job for Zeiss on the Bygone C, which is one of my favorites, the 35-8, because I think there's magic in that lens. It's a very vintage design. It has very much a look, but I favor size, compact portability over all things. And
Okay.
35 is my favorite focal length. And
Yeah.
the Zeiss 35 that I'm using here is basically a version of the same lens I'd shot on other systems and loved. And going back to when I was a kid, 35-8 was the first lens I used on a camera, so it makes sense to me as like that's what a photograph is, that kind of
Yeah.
fall off and that framing. So yeah, and I've sold Zeiss lenses as well, so it's like at every level. I think if you make images that people like, then they do just look at them. I get messages off listeners, with a photo of it in their hand, like I bought it, and they're going out and they're using it. And I think even, obviously you're speaking to a different level of consumer. However, it's really satisfying, isn't it, to know that your work and your enthusiasm for something has prompted someone else to do something and enjoy it, especially if they then go on to enjoy it.
Yeah, that's the key to all of it anyway, is enjoying it. It's but yeah, it's inspirational when you see that, people that they're that into it. I'm also very like, I tell people as well. I said, I don't go around saying, hey, yeah, you need to spend 15, $20,000 to take good pictures, because that's not true. It's a beautiful tool that we have, but at the end of the day, you still would have a good eye for a picture. That's the first and foremost. And then the thing is, you're buying lenses for a look. So it's that, but that one particular lens that I wanted, it gave me a look. But then I'll buy other lenses that don't cost anywhere near that. They're actually very cheap. Um, that have a certain look, and it might be that you want to go and buy an old vintage 50, say, that doesn't cost that much money, and you could, like I said, you can go to Japan or find over here where you see these old lenses. I picked up this beautiful old 21 f4 cine lens, R lens, for like 400 bucks, and it allowed it. I This last trip to Japan, I picked up a 24 2.8, but it allows me to go in at like zero point 0.2 of an inch, I think it is, like really, really, really close. And it allows you can shoot and push the background completely out of focus really nicely for not that much money. But it's, so you got to buy the lenses based on the look, and that 75 was the one, and then like you said, the holy grail is the 35, that 1.4. That's the I think that was probably the second lens that I bought. and it's just that's the one go-to. Like if you're going to go out with one lens, for me that's the one, because I can shoot portraits, I can do candid stuff, I can do landscapes on it. It's not, a lot of people, they like the 28, but you're kind of limited a little bit with 28, where it might be nice for the street work that you want to do, but you're not going to do the most flattering portrait of someone. It starts, um yeah, not making people look as nice.
Yeah, well, Greg Williams owns that space anyway. I think Greg's got the 28mm portrait kind of sewn up. He owns that. It's also
Yeah,
in terms of a look, like his
yeah.
Q stuff is great. Really like him. But yeah, the 35, you're right. That 35 1.4 is one of those ones where it's funny. Every time anyone talks about it on the show, and I joke often that this is accidentally a Leica and Polaroid podcast, but anytime anyone talks about it, they talk about it in those exact terms. But like, if I can only have one. But the joy of an interchangeable lens system is obviously that you don't have to just have one. That's the great
Right.
thing about like being able to achieve that look. And I think it's a bag full of brushes at the end of the day, isn't it? When you're working with a client and you're understanding what the need is, and you think, do you know what, that one is going to give me the thing? Because you talk about it a lot on your website, and I've seen some little bits of your teaching and stuff. To have the idea in your head first, which I think is the thing that is the thing that people misunderstand when you get the messages on Instagram. What lens did you use for that, or what camera did you shoot that on? Is coming at it the wrong way round,
Yeah.
isn't it?
If you were like a, photographer back in the 80s or so, or before that, you used multiple lenses. There was no one camera, one lens. It never was. That's, to me, is a new thing that people started introduced, like the YouTube generation of introduced this. But that was never what it was. So like, my first camera setup, you'd have a wide angle, you'd have a 50, and you'd have some kind of telephoto. And that's just what it was, because you all knew that, right, if I want to get that particular type of shot, I need this lens, because I can move around as much as I want. I'm never going to get the compression of a good telephoto lens with a 28. It's just not possible. So I knew that, right, well, I need to train myself in all these lenses. What is the look that I'm going to get with a 28? What's the look I'm going to get with a 24? What's the look 35, 50, long lens, etc. So that when you're walking around, you look at a scene, you instantly know that would look better with this lens. And you're almost changing the lens as you're walking towards the scene. But you've got to train your eye to get to that point first. You don't just show up and then put the lens on and then go, all right, why is this not working?
You've got to go through the iteration cycles as well. You've got to have the experience, even in a digital age where you can see the image pretty much instantly and review it the minute you get home, rather than waiting for something to be developed or developing it yourself. You still need to have gone through those experiences of knowing in that situation, so that in that situation that's going to look like this because I did it that time and it worked. And I feel like we don't talk enough to to other photographers about that iteration cycle, about reviewing work, about
Well, it's because
looking at other people's work. And
they wouldn't know. If you haven't done it as a job, you don't know. Like I don't claim to be an accountant. I don't claim to be a lawyer, because I haven't done it. So, if you're a working photographer and you're sent on a job, for example, you're a press photographer, you're sent to a job, and you show up on the job and there's 20 other publications are there. You're covering the White House, sorry, you're covering the 10 Downing Street and the Prime Minister coming out. You can't go and walk in front of them, right? I remember doing the Prince Edward's wedding. You're basically in 5 pens around a course, and there's maybe 100 photographers in each pen. It's not like you can turn around and say, "Well, I'm going to do it on my wide angle." Well, good luck with that, because you're in a pen, and you're
yeah,
not getting anywhere near that carriage, or you're not getting anywhere near the Prime Minister. So what would happen is you show
mm,
up on a job and everyone would turn around and say, right, we all have to feed our families. We all have to pay our bills. We're all going to do this on our long lens, and we're all going to stand back here, and they're going to walk out the door, and we're all going to get our shot. And then once you've got
mm,
your shot, everyone's got the shot, then you might be able to say, well, now I'm going to put my wide angle on and I'm going to see if we can get closer and get something
yeah.
different. But there was this uniform group of photographers where you'd say, right, we're all going to do it like this. And if you
Mm.
defied them and you screwed them up, you'd have the shit kicked out of you. Because now
Yeah.
you're messing with someone's livelihood. It's like, okay, yeah, you got your picture, but there's a lot of other people that have mouths to feed here. So that's how I grew up. I knew that, right, well, okay, we're all going to do it on this lens. Sometimes you'd have like court jobs where, you didn't know which way they were going to come out of a door. And you quickly look at another colleague and you say, all right, you cover that door, I'll cover that door, and whoever gets it will share the image. Because that's the way that it would work. They used to call it like share an egg, but you have to think, if you're going on a job, you have to have all these different lenses. You have to know how to shoot with them. You have to go through the motions of, right, if I'm working for a client today and they need, what's the type of image that do they need for the publication? Is it going to be a double truck, double page spread in the magazine? Do they need negative space? If I'm doing a portrait of someone and I can't get too close to them, or I need to make them look a bit more flattering, you could do it with 28 where you go further back. But unless you've learned all of that, how are you going to know? And like you said, I think a lot of the time, the photographers are holding back information from the newer photographers that are coming up. And then they've got to learn the hard way by losing a job, not getting called again, because you don't know how it works.
So on the subject there of kind of going through like doing your reps, taking your licks, getting through working with other photographers, one of the things I wanted to ask you about your work as I've looked back over as much of your stuff as I could get my hands on recently, and I think the iconic Phil Penman stuff is black and white, and his Streets of City, Streets of New York stuff and things like that. But I think what I loved seeing through your work, it seemed like the more recent color stuff that was creeping in was really
Don't
interesting in
utter
that.
that word, color.
Okay, well, no, because that's interesting because some of it didn't really look color, which I thought was because this is something I've played with a lot. I read the Joel Meyerowitz book, The Question of Color, and it broke my brain. I used to
Yeah.
enjoy shooting black and white, and then I read his book on a flight down to London, and then at the end of the flight, it was like the Alan Carr giving up smoking book. By the end of it, I couldn't shoot black and white anymore somehow. It didn't feel right to me anymore. It sort of broke a part of my brain. But what I do enjoy doing sometimes is shooting colour in a way that it almost looks black and white. And it's only when you engage with the image for more than a fraction of a second you realise, oh, that's not black and white, it's colour. And
Yeah.
the light here in Scotland lends itself to that with the forest stuff and the landscape stuff that I tend to be shooting when I'm out and about. But some of that seemed to be present in some of your images. But from your reaction there, it sounds
No,
like
I was
you
just
you
joking.
feel viscerally you're a black and white. Are you into your core a black and white photographer?
No, I probably shot more color in my time than I have shot black and white, but it was work. So, you wouldn't get very far as a commercial photographer if you just shot black and whites. And it was painful because everything that we would shoot would have to be as bright and colorful as possible because it's got to pop on the page. It's got to look good on the page. And it just, the black and white kind of came about where that's where I started. That's the how I began black and white shooting film, T-Max, Tri-X, all that stuff back in the day. And I don't know, I needed to go back to where I started, but I do go out and I do still shoot a lot of color. Some of the last campaign we just did for the M11P, that was all color images from Tokyo. You know, uh, actually, we wanted to include a bunch of color images in the last book that I did, the New York Street Diaries. But the problem, you don't think about this when you're doing your layout. You don't think about how the color pages lay out in the book. You only have so many pages that you can do color images with. So we ended up having to kill, because of the way that it was curated, we had to kill all the color images from the book and just do purely black and white book. So it's awkward. Like we're in the middle of we're just about to do another book right now, and you've got to like go, shit. Well, I want to include some color in this one, and like, well, what pages can we do it on? Like, well, you can do, 67 and 68 can be color, and then 96 and 97 can be color.
Yeah, because they over. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you
That makes
don't,
sense. So you.
yeah, you don't think about that unless you're a publisher and you know how the printing press is. You don't know how it works.
No, I think we all assume that just you can just choose put whatever color you want on whatever page, but not if you want the quality to be,
Yeah.
top notch. Did you ever see it? Sort of slightly related. Apple did a book a few years ago of their design work. It was just before Johnny Ive left.
The tools?
And it was a collection of photos. Yeah, it was the photos of the products and the tools.
Yep.
And it's a great book if listeners can ever get their hands on it.
I don't think you can. That was it was like a
Well,
that was
it's around.
wasn't it? It was like a limited edition, I think, but it was all very, very, very
Yes,
high
it was. Yeah,
quality images.
it was
Yeah, I know the
incredible.
one.
It's incredible to see in person because they double resolution printed it. They formulated their own white ink for the book because the white ink that they got in the test prints wasn't white enough. And they formulated a specific variant of the paper for it as well.
Damn.
And they reshot a bunch of the product photography from the 90s by either taking like products that they had in storage, or they had to, in some cases, buy them to recreate. Do you remember the classic iMac colourful circle of iMacs on a poster that said Yum
Yeah.
underneath? That was like the 90s. They recreated that in a studio with a more modern camera to get a higher quality image of it so they could do this higher quality print. If you ever get the chance to see it, the only way I can describe it is it's like the book equivalent of looking at a 4K TV next to an HD one. You suddenly go, oh wow, I know, I can
Yeah.
see it now. And it's tremendous. I bought one because just you had to. I felt like I had to have one as an item and a product. And with so many people's time, this is the old project manager in me shining through. You see, the small version of that book was £160 when it came out, and the case I made to my wife was, look, they cannot be charging enough for the amount of time
God, yeah.
that the people like. What's Johnny Ive's rate card? Like this book should cost $3,000. Like it's just to make it back. But it wasn't about that. It was about seeing these incredible images
Oh
of
yeah.
these products that defined the time.
If you're a $1 trillion company, you can do this. You
Yeah,
have that. You have that.
yeah. I don't think
Yeah,
they care.
they don't care.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's but back to the color. It's I'll try to use it like a lot of the stuff when I'm doing like the snowstorms and things like that, when it's like early morning and you want to use the world as like a studio. So like all the different street lights, the neon signs from buildings, you want to incorporate that into it. But then you still, I want it to be like a pop of color in the image. I'm not going like full saturated Martin Parr style, because there's already a million clones of Martin Parr trying to create his work. Right. So I didn't want, you're always trying to do something different or be individual. I guess I never really got into color until I started realizing about color grading, and the fact that you can make your images don't have to look like real life. You see it with cinema, you see it with TV shows. They'll color grade their images, and it's another creative expression. So I really got into doing that. And the cool thing you can do with a lot of the software like Capture One now, you can do match look, where you can take a movie image that you like, do a screenshot of it, put it into Capture One, and you can do that. You can take that color grade that they used in that film and apply it to your work. So I'm a lot more into that now, doing that kind of work. But it's hard to beat that monochrome camera, man. That's a beast.
well, I was gonna say yeah, because it can see in the dark.
That's an absolute beast of a camera.
The vintage lenses were the ones that unlocked for me the being allowed to play. I think I'd put a strange rule in my own head about not, the image the camera captures is the image the camera made, and that's why I bought a camera that captures images in that way. And I felt like I was somehow being dishonest or unfaithful to the object. Like I was doing it a disservice if I messed with the image too much. So I'd always tried to find cameras that made images that made the image I wanted to make, rather than futzing around in post and messing around with it. But it was when I got that R lens and you're shooting a woodpecker through a window in the snow at f16 because it's the only way you can focus the thing because it's a 560mm lens and the thing is moving quite quickly and you're shooting at like 2,000 3,000 of a second because you've got to try and freeze the act. And then I was like, well, I'm going to monkey with this because also it's a 30-year-old lens system. There is a bunch of dirt and crud in there. I've got to get rid of that. And that just unlocked something, the experience of doing that where you're like, well, I can't live with the image as is. I do have to do some stuff to this because it has been captured at a very high ISO very quickly. So it is a bit grainier than you'd want.
Oh, and just cleaning it. Cleaning at f16.
Yeah, well, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Have fun with that.
Yeah. there was a lot of being thankful that Lightroom lets you copy and paste edits, you know, like that kind of like healing stuff. So you can copy and paste it between images because they've quite rightly understood that like that's going to be on every frame.
Well, yeah, people don't realize that you used to have to spot prints. You know, that's way worse. Far worse, like, you know, that because that dust is on your negative, you have to physically go and spot the prints and match the ink on the print. So, you know, we're lucky now that you can click one button and say remove dust.
Oh yeah, no, it's marvelous that we don't know we're born. That's the other thing. Like you just go back and use something even from 10 years ago.
Oh yeah,
and you'll realize how far we've come. Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. Your final lens was just like, because we've talked about the Luxes because they're amazing exotica. I love talking about them. It's like talking about a Ferrari. But the Leica telephoto was kind of your last item on the list. Are they SL lenses or are they M lenses? Because I wasn't sure which ones you were referring to. I was curious.
So primarily I use the R lenses. So I have a 180 2.8 Elmarit that I use. Again, I think I picked it up for like $600. I have a 105 to 280 R lens that I use, but the cool thing is that you can put that on an M system, or you can use it on the SL system as well. So going back, like I said, because I shot a lot of press stuff, and the most common lens that most of us would use would be a 70 to 200. So it's a certain look that you can get with that lens that you cannot get with anything else. And the fact that I can use those telephoto R lenses, put them on my M, that's awesome. Like I had a 90 to 280 SL lens, which was a beautiful lens, but you were limited to just the SL system. And if I wanted to shoot on the monochrome, I needed something that I could use on both. I was that crazy guy that went into Leica and traded my 90 to 280 for a beat up old 105 to 280 R lens, and they thought I was completely insane.
I'll bet they did. Yeah. No, it's I mean, you are, but I think in the best possible way. As someone who was shooting with a 560mm R adapted lens, and their tiny camera looks like a toy on the end of it. I relate.
Yeah.
It is total madness. But I think that's where the fun lies, and that's where you won't find anything unusual if you use all of the same things that everyone else uses. Right? I think that's
Hey, you can create your own look. Just by going and finding a particular lens and just go out and shoot with that lens for a while and just create your own look. I've seen it with other photographers that I know that do that.
This has been an absolute treat and a pleasure, and I do hope that I get to run into you at some point in the future and sort of have a chat a little bit more. For people listening who maybe don't know your work, I can't imagine that's anyone, but just in case, where can they find and get more Phil Penman?
More Phil Penman. Best place is the website, philpenman.com, or just go on any one of the 8 other social media apps that I'm on. Probably the one that I'm most prolific that I'm posting to is Instagram. So just Phil Penman. Yeah. Thank you very much, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's an absolute pleasure. And thanks so much and have an amazing rest of the day.
All right, man. Stay well, okay?
You too. Take care.
Bye. Bye.
Huge thanks to Phil for coming onto the show. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you listening enjoyed it, don't forget that you can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. That's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, wherever you listen. You can also sign up to the weekly newsletter. That's on ianfarrell.com/sign-up, and there's a link to that in the show notes. Right, well, what are you waiting for? Find some weather. Get out there. But just, for God's sake, make sure your camera's weather sealed or in a bag. I do worry about taking mine out in the snow and the rain a little bit. It's fine in the cold. Like, I've tested it in the cold. I'm just not sure I want to test it in a blizzard. Although I did a bit over the winter. But, you know. Anyway, stay warm, stay safe, and make some great photos. And we'll see you next time.